There are moments in life that seem small when they happen, so ordinary you barely notice them, but years later, you realize everything changed right there. This is one of those stories. And before we begin, if stories like this speak to you, take a second to like the video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments if you've ever had a stranger change your day without knowing it. At the time, my life felt like it was slowly collapsing without making any noise. No dramatic disasters. No headlines. Just quiet loss after quiet loss. I was 27, living in a cramped apartment that smelled like old carpet and instant noodles. The walls were thin enough that I could hear my neighbors arguing at night, which somehow made my own silence feel louder. Money was always the problem. Or maybe I was. I worked 2 part-time jobs that barely covered rent, skipped meals more often than I admitted, and pretended everything was fine when my family called. My parents had their own struggles, so I didn't want to add mine to the pile. Friends stopped inviting me out because I always said no. Too tired, too broke, too embarrassed. Every night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying my failures like a broken playlist. Missed opportunities, wrong choices, promises to myself I never kept. I didn't feel hopeless exactly, just stuck. Like life was moving forward, and I was standing still, watching it pass me by. Most mornings started the same way, with my alarm buzzing too early, and my body feeling like it hadn't rested at all. I'd sit on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, doing quiet math in my head. Rent, bus fare, groceries. The numbers never worked, but I kept calculating anyway, like maybe this time they'd magically add up. At my first job, I stocked shelves at a small grocery store. Customers barely looked at me, except when something was wrong. "This price is incorrect," one man snapped, shoving an item toward my chest. I apologized automatically, even though it wasn't my fault. That word, sorry, came out of my mouth more than my own name. During breaks, I ate whatever I could afford. Sometimes that meant a granola bar I'd stretched across 2 meals. My stomach growled loudly once, and a coworker laughed, saying, "Guess someone skipped breakfast." I forced a smile, pretending it was a joke. At night, exhaustion followed me home like a shadow. I'd scroll through social media, watching people my age announce promotions, engagements, new homes. Each post felt like a quiet accusation. What are you doing with your life? I tossed the phone aside, heart heavy, wondering how I'd ended up so far behind, and whether I'd ever catch up at all. The second job was worse, mostly because it reminded me of how replaceable I was. A late-night cleaning shift in an office building downtown, empty hallways, flickering lights, and the hum of machines that never slept. I pushed a mop across polished floors while my thoughts ran wild. In the silence, every fear sounded louder. Some nights, my manager would walk by without saying a word, just a quick glance at the clock, like he was measuring my worth in minutes. Once, when I asked for an extra shift, he sighed and said, "We'll see." Already turning away. That "we'll see" haunted me more than a no. I stopped answering calls from friends. I didn't know how to explain that I couldn't afford dinner or drinks, that I was tired of being the one who always struggled. Even family dinners felt tense. My mother would ask gently, "Are you okay?" and I'd nod, lying through my teeth. Alone again, I'd sit in the dark with the city noise seeping through the windows, sirens, distant laughter, cars rushing somewhere important. I felt invisible, like the world had no use for me anymore. And the scariest thought kept returning, over and over, what if this is all my life will ever be? Things slowly began slipping in small, humiliating ways. I missed a rent payment by 3 days once, and my landlord taped a notice to my door in bright red ink. I stood there staring at it, heart pounding, hoping none of my neighbors had seen it. I peeled it off quickly and folded it into my pocket like a secret I couldn't afford to share. I tried cutting expenses even more. I stopped buying coffee, stopped using the heater at night, stopped replacing things when they broke. When my shoes started coming apart at the sole, I glued them back together and prayed they'd last another week. Every decision felt heavy, like one wrong move could push everything over the edge. At work, my focus slipped. I knocked over a display one afternoon, and the crash echoed through the store. My supervisor frowned and said, "You need to be more careful." I nodded, face burning, fighting the urge to explain how tired I was, how thin I felt stretched. but excuses didn't pay bills. At home, the silence grew heavier. I ate dinner standing up, lights off, conserving electricity. In the dark, my thoughts turned cruel. You're doing this to yourself. Other people figure it out. Why can't you? I pressed my palms against my eyes, wishing I could just pause life long enough to breathe. One night, after a long shift, I checked my bank balance and felt something inside me sink. The number was so low it almost looked like a mistake. I refreshed the app twice, hoping it would change. It didn't. My chest tightened, and for a moment, it felt hard to breathe. I called my sister, then hung up before it rang. What would I even say? That I was failing again. That I didn't know how much longer I could keep pretending everything was under control. Instead, I sat on the floor with my back against the couch, listening to the refrigerator hum like it was mocking me. The next day, I overheard coworkers talking about a weekend trip. One of them glanced at me and said, "You probably wouldn't want to come anyway." It wasn't cruel, just casual. Still, it stung. I realized people had already decided who I was, the tired one, the broke one, the background character. That night, hunger kept me awake. My stomach ached, and the clock ticked loudly in the dark. I stared at the ceiling again, feeling smaller than ever. I wasn't dreaming about success anymore. I was just hoping nothing else would go wrong. Survival had become the goal, and even that felt exhausting. The breaking point didn't arrive with a dramatic explosion. It came quietly, disguised as another normal day. I woke up late after a night of shallow sleep and missed the bus by seconds. I stood there watching it pull away, chest tight, knowing I couldn't afford a rideshare. So I walked. 40 minutes in the cold, shoes barely holding together, thoughts spiraling with every step. At work, everything felt heavier. My hands shook while stacking items, and a customer complained that I was too slow. I wanted to tell her I was doing my best, that my best just wasn't very impressive anymore. Instead, I swallowed it and kept moving. During my break, I sat alone in the storage room, head against the wall, listening to my heartbeat thud in my ears. Later that night, mopping empty offices, I caught my reflection in a glass door. Tired eyes, slumped shoulders, someone who looked older than they should. I barely recognized myself. When did I become this person? I wondered. Not angry, just sad. By the time I got home, my body felt hollow. I lay on the floor instead of the bed, staring up, feeling like I was shrinking inside my own life. Nothing was actively falling apart, but nothing was getting better either. And that realization scared me more than any overdue bill ever had. A few days later, the exhaustion stopped feeling physical and turned into something heavier. Emotional. I went through the motions on autopilot, work, walk, sleep, without really being present. Even my worries felt dull, like my mind was too tired to panic anymore. One evening, I sat on a park bench after work, watching people pass by. Couples laughing. A kid chasing pigeons. Someone strumming a guitar badly but confidently. Life was happening everywhere except inside me. I felt oddly disconnected, like I was watching the world through thick glass. That's when a quiet thought surfaced. Not hopeful, not inspiring. Just honest. I can't keep doing this forever. It wasn't a plan. It wasn't a solution. Just an admission I'd been avoiding. My chest tightened as fear followed right behind it. Change sounded risky. Dangerous. What if trying something new made things worse? I stayed on that bench longer than usual, hands tucked into my jacket, heart heavy with confusion. I didn't know what needed to change or how. I only knew that whatever I was doing now was slowly wearing me down. And for the first time, instead of pushing that thought away, I let it sit there with me in the fading light. The turning point didn't feel brave. It felt uncomfortable, like standing on the edge of something unstable. The next morning, I woke up with that thought still lingering in my head, heavier than usual. I can't keep doing this forever. It scared me because it demanded something, though I still didn't know what. On my day off, I sat at the small kitchen table with a notebook I hadn't opened in years. I didn't write goals or dreams. I just wrote facts. What I earned. What I spent. What I was avoiding. Seeing it all in one place made my stomach twist, but it also stripped away the fog. I wasn't unlucky. I was stuck and afraid of failing again. I asked myself a hard question. What's one thing I could try that wouldn't destroy me if it failed? The answer wasn't dramatic. I decided to apply for a certification course I'd been thinking about for months. Something practical, cheap, and painfully slow. It meant studying after work, sacrificing sleep, and facing the possibility that I still wouldn't be good enough. I hovered over the apply button for a long time. My heart raced. This wasn't hope, it was Nothing changed overnight. In fact, the first few weeks felt worse. I studied late at night, eyes burning, rereading the same pages because my brain was exhausted. Some days, I failed practice tests badly and had to fight the urge to quit. "See, you're not cut out for this," the voice in my head whispered. Work didn't slow down. Bills didn't wait. I still skipped meals some nights to afford course materials. But small things began shifting. I started waking up with a reason, thin, fragile, but real. When I understood a concept I'd struggled with, I felt a quiet satisfaction, like a knot loosening. There were setbacks. I missed deadlines. I almost dropped out after a rough week where everything went wrong. But I didn't. Not because I was motivated, because I was tired of starting over. Months passed. Slowly, almost invisibly, progress stacked up. A past exam. A kind comment from an instructor. Enough confidence to believe I might actually finish. Life was still hard, but it no longer felt frozen. I was moving, clumsily, imperfectly, but forward. And for the first time in years, that felt like enough to keep going. The outcome didn't arrive with applause or instant freedom. It came quietly, the same way everything else in my life had, one ordinary day at a time. I finished the certification and updated my resume with shaking hands, half expecting nothing to come of it. But a few weeks later, I got an email. Then an interview. Then a job offer that paid just enough to let me breathe. I didn't become rich. I didn't suddenly love every part of my life. But I stopped counting coins at the grocery store. I bought new shoes without guilt. I slept through the night more often than not. The constant pressure in my chest softened, and that alone felt like a miracle. Looking back, I realized the real change started long before the job. It started with one small act of kindness toward myself. Sitting down, telling the truth, giving myself permission to try again without guarantees. That was the moment everything shifted, even if I couldn't see it then. Life is still imperfect. I still have bad days, but I'm no longer stuck in survival mode. And if you're watching this feeling invisible or exhausted, know this. You don't need a dramatic rescue. Sometimes, all it takes is one small, honest step. If this story resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life stories like this, and leave a comment sharing where you are in your own journey. You're not as alone as you think.